Hello and welcome to Marijuana Today Daily. I guess this is the last official episode. This is the last wind down episode of this podcast as I kind of end my time reporting on cannabis news every day. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. It's Saturday, May 15th, and I have my friend Heather Sullivan with me for this last episode. Heather,
Good morning,
welcome.
Shay. How are you?
Good. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday podcasting.
Anytime, buddy.
Yeah. So I guess I probably should announce this right now. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, that means that you have subscribed to the kind of the podcast feed that I put out via the website that I put up for this podcast. And what I've decided is I'm going to actually keep podcasting on this feed. I'm not going to be doing Marijuana Today daily as like a news show, and it's the name of it will probably change. But I'm gonna keep podcasting on this feed because there's a connection to thousands of listeners right now that I guess I just want to maintain, and I'm sure some of you will stop listening because you're listening to the show to get cannabis news every day, and it's not going to be that anymore. So if you don't want to listen, that's fine, no hard feelings, because it's a format change. It's like when your favorite radio station goes from country to rock, or rock to progressive jazz, or whatever. Yeah. So but the long and short of it is, if you enjoy listening to me meander all over the world, or just talk about things, if you want to hear, me talk about my upcoming adventures in permaculture farming and just being outside more, then don't unsubscribe to this podcast, and I will be putting out content. So that's the big announcement of this podcast. So
It is
Heather.
a big announcement, Shay. Congratulations on trying out some new ventures. You and I are pretty friendly, so I know how committed you are to trying out something new, getting your fingers in the dirt, so to speak.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I like doing new things. I've been doing this for long enough, and it feels like a good time to change. And
How long have you had the daily?
how long have I had the daily? You know what? I can actually answer that precisely. I mentioned this to, I think, when I was on with Carl, but I started this new thing that I encourage everyone to do. I made a Google spreadsheet with basically running down long, and it's month by month for like my entire life. So I was born in early 1978, and it just runs, month, just every single month. And then all the columns have different, life, like the age of my kids, my age, and then just a couple of columns for this happened. So, it's been really actually helpful just figuring out the exact chronology of all the things that happened. I'm 43 now, just thinking okay, when did I go to, Ann Arbor for that thing? Or was that 2004 or 2006? Or I've also moved around a lot. So, just figuring out the transitions of, when did I actually move out to Boulder? Or, I really only had kind of a vague sense of it, but in building this thing, it's made me kind of, check back on emails or photos and kind of actually pinpoint down the exact points of my life. And it's been fun. So I can actually tell you exactly when I started up the daily. So hold on one second. So
How often do you actually reference this document? I am so curious about this.
Well, I just started this a month ago. So it's been, I'm sure that my attention is, I'm not going to spend as much time on this thing as, this is my initial, I guess, fill out phase, as I kind of get, kind of organize things.
Right.
Yeah. But I guess I plan on keeping it going. It's kind of it's not exactly a diary, but it's kind of, it's it's a timeline. It's it's my personal timeline. So That's the cool. That's well,
Very
cool. But
cool.
that's the
That is
dorky
very
thing.
Shay of you.
So I started Marijuana Today. Marijuana Today, our weekly, the show that's not going anywhere. The show that you are now a host of, on July 11th in 2014. I was 36 years old.
Oh my goodness. Where were you when you started it? Like, where were you? So I don't know if this is a good time to talk about this, but why don't you just briefly tell the story of how you started Marijuana Today and how you started the Daily? I mean, I think, that's a great thing to wrap up.
Yeah. So Marijuana Today started because like me and a bunch of friends, kind of realized that everyone was having conversations about drug policy. And actually what it was is Chris Lotlicker, his wife, said, maybe you should talk to your friends more about all these drug policy ideas that you're instead of like burying me with quite so much of your thoughts. He was kind of podcasting at her a little bit, I think too much about his. So that kind of led to, so Chris came up with the idea of starting, a podcast. And so Chris, Dan Goldman, Adam Smith, Chris Crane, and myself, I think that was the first, because we did 10 shows initially before we even launched the anything. And I can't remember if Betty was in on the very first, like the first 10, because there was 10 pilot episodes that I don't have today. Like I did a shitty job of like saving them, and I had a couple like computer crashes, so like that data has been lost. So I don't remember exactly, but it was that crew, maybe a couple other people I'm forgetting, and apologies if I am forgetting you. And so we just did 10 shows to figure out like if it worked. And, I had to figure out how to, edit a podcast. We had to figure out scheduling, just like the technological, because we were using Skype, and we had to figure out like, we didn't want to just be like a Skype show. So kind of, we had everyone recording their audio locally, but this was before we had any money. So like I wasn't able to send people recording gear. So we just kind of had to figure out, it was a very like, we had to hack together, kind of how to have a podcast with everyone all over the country. So let's see. So 2014, July is when we launched, but I think we probably started doing our practice shows like February or March of 2014.
Did you guys know it was going to be a weekly format right away? Did you bounce around doing it in a different format?
No, it was definitely, that was, from the start, we're like, we'll just do this once a week.
Yeah.
And the format of the show has been remarkably consistent. Like we pretty much figured it out right away and just have been doing, pretty much been doing the same thing. Like, cause it works, you get the, smart group of people together, and, we have a dynamic industry. It's kind of easy to kind of make good content. So, so it was just like a hobby, kind of the start, because I was actually going to school. I was finishing up, my last year of like a back to college stint. Just went to school here at the local college here in Portland and studied computer science. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go be like a computer science guy. Cause I had kind of like now I had previously been a blogger. I'd written about the environment, and that had been kind of how I made my living, but that just got like easy and boring. And that's not like an especially lucrative career either. So I was like, I'm gonna, I'll go back to school, and computer science seems cool. And I like computer science, but I wasn't super excited about just being like a, kind of the traditional path of being a programmer. Like didn't seem exciting to me, like at all, like really kind of ever.
Yeah. I can't picture you in that,
well,
in a traditional role like that.
Yeah.
I can't even picture it.
I wasn't like a super great computer scientist, like I was decent enough, and like, I'm good technically, but like the thing that I noticed is that I was definitely more of a kind of multimodal creative person than like kind of the, the kids and people in my program, cause like I can write, and I can do graphic design, and I can edit video and audio. And there's just like all of my homework always, like I probably got I probably averaged like, 10 points higher on my homework than I should have because I always made it look really good. Like I would graphic design out like, answers to problem sets and like, instead of just, all my shit looked like really polished. So, that was a helpful skill to have. And then I graduated, but as soon as I graduated, Forefront hired me. So I worked for Forefront. They were like, hey, we want to start like a little publishing division. Why don't you do that? And I was like, okay, cool. I got a bunch of ideas. And that's actually where the newsfeed email started. I was working at Forefront and I said, okay, well, first thing we're going to do is an email newsletter. So I built kind of the mechanisms for that while at Forefront, and it was the Forefront Daily Headlines, I think was the name of it. So that's where that newsletter kind of grew and got started. And then specifically with that, I think a couple years later, Forefront kind of stopped doing it, and they very kindly gave me the list, and I kind of picked it back up and ran it for 5 or 6 more years as the newsfeed. And so, but that kind of scuttled my path into traditional computer science. And after about a year, Forefront figured out that they didn't really want to be in publishing, and I got laid off. And that's when I started up the Daily. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna make this a thing. And May 24th, 2016, I launched the Daily.
Really?
I was 38 years old. So I'm like just a little bit shy of like 5 years, like 3 weeks shy of like, so.
No,
May
not
24th.
even. You're like 1 week shy.
Well, I stopped like a week or two ago. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So 2016, but around this time I started up the Daily.
So that's really funny because I put my feet in this industry in early 2016. And I guess I didn't realize, the Daily was one of the first, I think it was the first news feed that I subscribed to. So the first email feed that I subscribed to. And I had been listening to the weekly show. At that point, I had probably been listening to the weekly show for at least a year, maybe a little bit less than that. So
didn't we meet? I think we met at the cannabis party for here, the legalization campaign party here, like on the night that Trump won. I'm pretty sure that was the event that we actually met.
I feel like yes.
Or had we met before then?
I feel like so. Here's what I remember. I think we met at a party at the campaign chairman's apartment, at David Boyer's apartment.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That's where I feel like I first got a chance. I remember, oh my God, Shay. So of course, like, I didn't know you. I was new to the movement. My main source of development and like information about cannabis business and policy was the weekly show. So it was the group you just talked about, definitely Betty. As you know, I'm Team Betty Aldworth all day long.
Taylor West was also one of our founding members.
Yep, and Taylor West. So I remember being super I remember at that party, like you were the guy that you were like the scary guy for me to talk to, the one that I was like nervous to introduce myself to.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like fame is so weird, like being on both sides of it. Obviously like I've touched little bits of microfame, but yeah, at that party.
Oh, well, I mean, and part of it's me. I'm quite effusive when it comes to letting people know when I think they're doing really good things. And I'm pretty sure I spent most of our time together at that party telling you how amazing I thought the work that you were doing. I remember when I first found out that there was someone related to Marijuana Today, the show, that lived in Portland, Maine. Like, I will admit this, I totally stalked you on social media. This was when you were on social media. I felt like literally it was at that point in time my dream to meet you. And now look at us 5 years later.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, okay. He's just a big goofball.
Yeah. Then I start getting your during the Trump campaign, I would start getting your frustrated and heated text messages, politics rantings. Yeah.
Well, you know what it was is when I bounced out of social media, like I lost my actual outlet to like rant. And so like, yeah, sometimes my friends end up being the recipients of like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Yeah. That's funny. What's it like to become like a host of a show that you like used to be like a fan of? 'Cause that's a cool thing.
Scary. That was very nerve wracking for me. And it's funny. So I believe now I don't have a Google Sheets chart of my life, but I did look back because I've officially, I think my first time on the show. Hey, do you have this in your spreadsheet? My first time on the show.
No, I don't. No,
So
it was,
I believe it was the beginning of June last year. So I'm almost on my 1 year anniversary. And
that's awesome.
It's funny. I remember we were just texting one day and I remember saying like, hey, if you ever do an episode that's like focused on Maine or has a Maine aspect to it, I would love to come on as a guest. And you're like, how about next week?
Had you been a guest before at all? Or did you?
Nope.
Yeah, because you jumped. Yeah, I was like,
I went
oh,
immediately
you should host.
from guest to host.
Yeah.
For a lot of good it did, for whatever that means. So I asked you and you said, hold on, you said, yep, how about next week? And I said, great. And then I think you said you knew how I felt about Betty. So you actually got Betty to come on that first show as well. So we did that show with me, you, Betty, and the guy that runs Atlantic Farms. I can't remember his name.
Ian,
yes. Me, you, Betty, and Ian. And a podcaster was born that day because I've been coming back pretty much every month since then.
Well, and it's not an easy gig at all. Like, I mean, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to prepare. You have to write scripts. Like you have to actually I've hosted a couple times and I'm not good at it at all. It is hard. Like it is a difficult thing. So I'm impressed by everyone who can do it well. And you can definitely do it well. I mean, you and Ben both kind of the same boat where you just threw you right in. I'm like, all right, go do this.
Ben's a gnat. Ben is amazing. He's so polished. So we both love to host. Ben is much more polished. He's much more reserved than I am. So I feel like a lot of times I bring a lot of my own goofiness to the show, my own silliness, my getting excited, enthusiastic about talking to certain people and really loving the connection with the guests and with the listeners. And Ben just comes in and he's like this consummate professional, measured tone. He's extremely engaging to listen to. And I just love how he started immediately dropping opinions. That was awesome because that's a scary thing to do when you're a host of a podcast, because you don't want to upset or offend your guests, right? If you have different opinions. And then, to put yourself out there in a way that people can publicly hear what your opinions are, and make judgment calls, make judgments about you based on, these shows. I've been really impressed with what Ben's brought to the table. I'm so grateful that I kind of am able to coast a little bit on his broad wingspan.
I imagined you guys having a, like a radio morning show, like you two guys, like you and Ben. It'd be like Heather and Ben in the morning.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't like to get up that early in the morning. So could it be Heather and Ben in the late night?
Oh, do you know what happened? The best thing ever. So with the newsfeed, email newsletter, that went out 6 days a week. I don't remember exactly when I did it because I didn't write it down, and I guess I could check. But sometime over the last like year or two, I hid a link in the email. So there's just a period kind of at the very bottom that just has a link to it. You know, like it has an HTML link. And if you click on that link, it's a mail to link that sends an email to me. And the subject is first one to notice this gets $100. And on the very last day, no shit, on the last day that I published the news feed, I get an email from a like former SSD peer, and he was like, "Hey Shay, just wanted to check on this." And you know what happened that was even better is I had screwed up, and in the HTML mail to link, I had left off the .com. So like if you actually clicked on it, it would bring up, it was just like Shay at MJ Today Media without the .com. So like you had to do a little bit of work, you had to drop in the .com yourself to get the email to work, but otherwise all the pieces were there. But on the last day it was claimed. And I was like, it made me so happy.
That is awesome. I can't believe on the last day.
The last day.
Perfect. Yeah. What a great way to end, right?
Yeah. And it was funny because like when I was first putting the thing in, the little Easter egg, I was like, oh, I should make it 1,000. And I'm like, wait, no, don't screw over future Shay. And so like when on like that last day, I'm like, oh, thank God the past Shay didn't screw me over there.
Now I will admit that I have looked up good boon before. For anyone that reads to the bottom of the newsletter, I think you have this really cute statement at the bottom of it that says, if someone forwarded this message to you, they did a good boon for you today.
Yes.
And then you go on to describe what that means. What a random concept. But it caught my eye.
Doesn't it have the link to the Robert Redford nodding?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I don't remember. It was ages ago that I first clicked on that link.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's if you haven't seen it, there's like a kind of famous meme that's from a movie I think in the 70s where Robert Redford just has this nodding wise nod like you've done good,
A good boon, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean that's how all of our stuff grew, is by people telling their friends too, because I never had the bandwidth to actually market any of the things I've been doing. So everything's been please tell your friends about this, and people have. So that's been. Awesome.
Here's my brush with fame. I was in a dispensary, a grand opening of a local dispensary recently, local adult use retail store. It was actually, so even though I worked on the campaign to legalize cannabis in Maine in 2016, I actually waited to go into a retail store until the company that I work for opened their first retail store. So I was there on grand opening day, and I was just chit-chatting with some people, and this fella kept looking over at me every time I spoke. And come to find out, right. And now no one's come up to me and said I know you. I haven't had that, but people often say to me oh, you seem so familiar to me. And so my two primary questions when someone says, oh, you seem very familiar to me, the two things I say are you on Tinder? Because Maine is very small, and and maybe you might have seen me there. And my second question is, do you happen to listen to Marijuana Today podcast? And I do get, oh, that's where I recognize your voice from. So I think my voice is a little more famous, so to speak, than I am.
Yeah, no, you're definitely, you're definitely famous. Once we can actually get back into events, you are known to all the people who listen to the podcast, and there's a lot of them. So you are micro famous.
Yeah, let's take a moment and thank those listeners for continuing to stick with us as cannabis news and business continues to expand. And like I say, when I host, we know there's a lot of places that you can get your news and get your, and listen to people's opinions about cannabis. So I'm always very grateful for folks who are willing to give us a little bit of time, or in some cases, a significant amount of time. So Shay, one thing you might not know about me, when I prep for hosting the shows, I almost always pull like a typical college all-nighter the night before when I'm writing the show. I am not super creative like you. You're definitely like, your creativity shows in the background of this Zoom meeting. I can see your creativity behind you. I don't have that. So I am the type of person that can only do things like write a script under pressure. So I find I usually have to be, it's exactly how I wrote when I was working towards my MBA. It's exactly how I wrote when I was in college. I am good at writing, but I have to feel some pressure around it. I don't know why that is. So you'll be happy to know that I'm almost always pulling an all-nighter before I record.
Well, no, because sometimes you send an email out at like 3:47 a.m. Like, here's the notes that I just finished up. I'm what?
Oh yeah. And a little tip for people: it makes you look really good in the corporate world when you're sending things out. You know, obviously, doing the podcast with Shay isn't the corporate world, but I also function that way in my real life. So oftentimes, people, certain people, I'll make sure that they know that I'm working at 2 a.m. on a Friday night. And you wonder why I'm still on Tinder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my body wakes up like at 5:30, like on the dot, like even if I stay up late. So if I don't go to bed, I'm like, I can't function.
I hear you.
Yeah. I remember back in my 20s struggling to wake up at noon. It's so funny.
Yeah, I've always been this way. I tell people I work on West Coast hours, or I function better like on West Coast hours, which, I work for now an international cannabis company. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it does allow me to connect with people across the country. When I start my work day at 10 instead, or 11 instead of 7, it allows me to go a little bit later in the night. But that, you don't want to hear about
and
that.
nothing gets done at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard anyways. So you're not missing anything.
Nothing gets done by 7 a.m. now that we don't have the daily newsletter coming through that early in the morning. I'm bummed. I have to say I'm bummed that, I always rely on the daily, for me, the newsletter, to make sure that I don't miss anything big, right? So that I'm not blindsided when I walk into a meeting and someone says, "Oh, did you hear what happened in Ohio? Oh, did you hear what happened in Oklahoma?" So I'm sad to be losing it, but I will tell listeners there are other great daily newsletters, email newsletters that folks can sign up for.
There are, yeah.
Our friends over at Marijuana Moment do a great one.
Yeah. What else besides Marijuana Moments are there out there? Because I don't actually know of any. Well, I guess there's a couple other emails, but nothing like the newsfeed though.
I know.
The thing that I think that worked for the newsfeed is like the dead simple formatting. I was always like, I'm gonna be like Craig from Craigslist there. Like, we need like one image at the top and just dead simple formatting and the bare bones information that you need. And and it definitely worked.
So what are you going to do with all this? So I wonder if listeners know what actually goes into the newsfeed, how much energy and resources it was actually taking up from you to do the daily show and the newsletter.
It was about an hour and change a morning. Mm-hmm. Depending on how busy the news was, it could be like an hour and a half, but I could get it done in like 60 to 90 minutes. So, it was me just plowing through, just scanning over shit tons of headlines, picking open up the relevant ones and then getting them, basically slotted into kind of my system that I devised to organize all the headlines. And then
how do you pick the relevant headline in a given day, or the relevant headlines for a given day?
I don't know. I think my brain is just uniquely designed so that I can look over a list of 800 headlines, and I just be like, oh, that's relevant. That like I would just
That's more relevant than this.
I can scan headlines, and I know, like, by the shape of the headline, by the word, like I almost don't even have to read the individual words. I would know that it was relevant. Then I would open it up. I would double check, and then yeah, I would get it popped in. Because I mean, what was it? 720,000 headlines my eyes have scanned over. So like I've figured, my brain figured out like the patterns. It's just pattern recognition, that's really all it is, kind of at the cognitive level, I think. So that was I think that's the hard thing to replicate, that was definitely the hardest thing to replicate. And, it's not like news like that can't be done algorithmically. I mean, you could definitely write some software to get close. I would think you'd probably still need a little bit of human touch just to maintain and to dial it in. But yeah.
Oh, damn it. If we had a robot Shay, then the robot Shay could do the daily, and you could go run off and play in the woods.
Well, I mean, I definitely, there's stuff you can do with machine learning, I definitely had large data sets where I could have, if I had the story of the last, of my business has always been like, I've done well enough over the last, 4 years where it's been able to sustain itself, but I never got to the point where I had the right number of sponsors at the same time to where like I had enough resources to spend $25,000 on, some software to read news better. So it was really just like that. I just, I have it all up in my head. I never had the bandwidth. Cause it's also that just time and energy too. Cause, I just pretty much have been doing all the things, with the kind of obviously, you and the guests make the podcast, but all the kind of behind the scenes shit, that's been a kind of doing all that. So, so I just haven't had the space.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's your focus when it comes to it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, running a business is fucking hard.
Imagine running a business that was still federally illegal, Shay.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm really glad that I'm a media company. I think that was a smart play to not get anywhere near cannabis, because I'm a media company. Yeah. Well, and the cool thing about a media company is if you're if you're a podcast company, then you can make a podcast about anything, and then that's what your business does now. So.
So you mentioned to listeners when we first started talking that you're going to continue to use this feed to share other content. Does that mean that you are thinking about starting up a different kind of podcast, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but the plan. I mean, what I'm hoping is that I'm going to be dipping into producing some videos to be published on YouTube, and that will be probably in the fall sometime. I'm going to take some time to just kind of figure out how I want to do that. And then this I'm going to maintain as probably like a once a week podcast that I don't exactly know what the format is going to look like, but I'm going to kind of kick it around and figure it out. So,
listeners who have suggestions on what Shay should be podcasting next, send him an email.
No, I don't care. I don't want to hear. No,
all right, send me an email.
I care what people think, but when it comes to figuring out what I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to do. I just got to figure that shit out. I sound like such a jerk.
Oh, no. I think that, those of us have been listening to you give the daily headlines for a couple of years now. We know Shay Gunther's personality because you do read the news, but you do put some of you into each broadcast. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you could hang and make it through all my freak out episodes, then you've shown a tolerance for my personal podcast foibles. Yeah.
And I'll just clue people in on a little secret. what you hear on when Shay has his freak out episodes is not even close to what he's actually thinking. It's way worse. And the things that he'll text.
Well, it's close.
Out,
the intensity of
yes,
it is maybe.
Yes, no. But I guarantee you that what the listeners hear as Shay having a strong opinion about something, that opinion is generally 10 times stronger than what you guys are hearing. It's really funny.
Yeah, I've always been pretty strong of opinion. Well, what is it? The strong positions lightly held. If facts come along and change things, then I'm not going to dig in the face of facts. But I guess I come to a position after a measured survey of what the facts tell me, and if the facts tell me that the sky is blue, then the sky is blue, and I'll fight you for that.
See? No, yeah. I would say it's funny because you do have that mindset where you really are fact-based in developing your positions, but then you become very passionate about the opinions and positions that you take. But as a friend of yours, I've seen you become quite passionate about, or I've seen this, you are a man that carries a lot of passion for the things that are important to you. So I love that it came through on the daily while still providing folks with just the news, the news that we needed to know as we walk into our workday and try to do this crazy, cannabis industry thing. Yeah.
Well, and like, I think the feedback I got from a lot of people, and I don't know how, widespread or ubiquitous this was, but, it's just that people would tell me that it was nice to hear someone acknowledge that everything wasn't just okay and normal. And, because nothing about the last year has been normal. And, so, I guess if I'm okay with some people being frustrated that it wasn't just the news, if it made some of those, other people feel better, just so, because, if you're like, the people who would get mad at me, like I'm producing this daily podcast for free for you to listen to. And like, the people who'd be like, it's not like the way I want it to, be like, well, who are you? Like, who are you? Who are you to have the temerity of don't listen. Like, I don't care. I've never cared about like, if anyone like and that I'm sure to my detriment, my listener numbers, but like, yeah, I don't, if you have a problem with anything I say, I don't care at all.
I love it.
Yeah. That's worked so far. I mean, it makes me feel better about the stuff I put out. So yeah, that's important. Cool. All right. Well, you know what, Heather, it's Saturday. I'm kind of done with podcasting. So, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap up, so I'm going to say this is the last wrap up episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But, like I said at the beginning of the show, we are going to be publishing on this feed. So yeah, I guess don't unsubscribe, and more content will be flowing. You'll get to maybe hear me rant about the world and maybe talk about goats and bees and farm stuff.
I can't wait. And Shay, just, as a listener and a reader, I guess I would like to speak for those of us who have relied on the Daily Show to get them their news. Thank you. Thank you for putting that together. Thank you for doing that and offering it for free. I've said this to you before, but the things that you do here at MJ Today Media have made a big difference in my personal growth in my career. So I just want to say thank you to you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you very much. That's very nice and appreciated. Yep. And people thanking me is, kept me, kind of working when things were like crappy. So, yeah. So,
and don't forget, listeners, the weekly show is not going anywhere. So
nope, it's not.
Make sure that you continue to join us. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in cannabis business and cannabis business and advocacy right now. And
our industry is never going to get boring.
No, nope.
Yeah. So I'm so happy to have MJ today, or have marijuana today, as you know, I get to keep a foot in the industry. So, yeah, thank you for being involved with that. And, you know, I'm going to say thank you to all the listeners and readers. So, cause yeah, you all have made this thing possible. I mean, I've made a living as a podcaster in legal marijuana. I'm the only one. So yeah, thank you. All right. Well, with that, I will be back or sometime in the next week or two. And I guess I'm officially signing off Marijuana Today Daily. So, yeah, be well.